Got it. All right.
Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, where'd it go? Oh no. Oh, there you are. I lost you guys first. Oh my god. Okay. Hi everyone. This is our podcast. During our podcast, we will be exploring different child services and their impact on Black and Indigenous people. My name is Ashley, and I'm going to start off by explaining why I decided to agree on choosing these two groups. So my reason for choosing these groups is simply because I feel like both carry a unique history, cultural, and a systematic experiences that have influenced their lives. These communities have been deeply affected by so many things, such as slavery, racism, and just overall structural inequalities, which shape their access to certain resources and opportunities today. So, for example, indigenous communities carry the burden of having to deal with racial residential schools being taken away from their land, um, the effect of people trying to silence their culture, which all has resulted in a long lasting trauma, which has affected multiple generations. It's affected the loss of their language and their identity, and it has created a systematic barriers in areas such as healthcare and education and housing and justice, and overall made it difficult for them. For the Black community, they've carried systematic racism due to slavery and possible policies that have forced them to be away from other groups, which has affected their education and employment and overall their health outcomes. We can see uh, racism within the Black communities as part of like higher policing, or that the fact that they face higher rates of individuals going to prison or experience just overall unfair treatment, as well as being excluded from leadership positions, um, big decision making roles. Um, I also believe that it obviously created some negative stereotypes and barriers that limit their participation in our communities overall. But due to all of this, I still feel that both communities carry a very strong resilience and cultural richness, um, where they are still able to continue their culture and share their knowledge with all of us and healing practices, which are often overlooked in our mainstream system. But I feel if we recognize these strengths, it is important for us to shift from what we think the community lack, but to based on their strengths and empower them and support them through their strengths and their beliefs.
Great. Michelle, do you want to go next? You want to explain why you wanted to do this topic?
Uh, well, as a Black woman working in child and youth care for a very long time, I know and I've experienced the white lens as a CYW, and just seeing its impact on Black families and Black kids in care, working with children in care. And so I I know that it's really important just shift the attention and just become more of a like a proactive ally means like not just understanding okay what the issues are, but it's really making like an active commitment in the community and understanding like what the real like some of the overpressing and lingering issues are, and to make an active shift. I mean, participating, I need to be there, and I'm aware of some of my own some of my own biases and some of the work that I need to do. So I feel that the more that I can help my community shift its power, shift its position, less kids in care, less kids getting labeled, less kids having problems in school, less kids looking like me having issues, and I know like just like I think that I have some of the I don't say like the expertise, but I think that I can be probably a little bit more efficient than some of I don't like the white lens, right? I think I can be a little bit more efficient because I think that I can help steer and navigate some of those systems that might be a little bit uh, stuck otherwise, right? So I think that I can use my voice that way and use my privilege that way and really assist these families that are in that are dealing with child welfare issues and circumstances and help them uh, bust down some of those barriers and empower them, offer some guidance. And I think that'll be a more better use of my time, right? More appreciative, more. I want to see better outcomes in my community with my people, all people, but of course my community, my people. When I see them, I see myself. I see my cousins. I see my my brothers. So I'm a better circumstances. So yes, that's an attitude for me to be more active and to be more caring and to be more mindful of what my actions are doing and how they're helping other people that look like me, especially Black and Indigenous people, but people. So yeah, that's welfare because the stats uh, for my community are higher than any other community, higher than the white community, right? That the black kids and black families are higher numbers in child welfare than white kids, and we know why, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's a place to put a focus and to be really active and to be angry and to be outraged, to be pissed off, and to like use my skills in a way and use my education in a way that will be uh, welcomed, right? It will be welcomed in my community. So
Yeah.
really, I feel that I'm appreciative of what I learned in the course and the empowerment that I learned in the course, but I it's always sort of been there. But this kind of gives more like language and more of a tone that is accurate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
please, Chris, do. We're trying to fill in all that time.
So yeah, for me, I like that this final project was going to be focused on Black, Indigenous, or minority populations. Didn't really matter to me in which respect it was, but I like that we chose in regards to children's services. I work in a school, and so I don't work in this area directly, but I do see it, and yeah, I don't work in Canada, and it is a different demographic where the country I live in Switzerland, and they have their own different power dynamics and cultural dynamics there, but many similarities, many things that you can carry over from it regardless.
Oh, of course,
And
yes.
yeah, I think basically to reference like the that Molali chapter 7, the web of oppressions, I think this sort of assignment is helpful in being able to look at this demographic and yeah, kind of start to piece together those sorts of things where even though their race or ethnicity is going to play a part in how the system is engaging with them, we can always think about the complexity of somebody's identity and the different ways that that's going to shape the experiences that they're getting, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely need to understand that that is what the that's what the family wants us to understand, right? They want us to get on board with um, what their experiences have been and to understand the multiple issues that they have survived, and
Yeah,
to not assume that you're coming in to like rescue them, but
exactly.
to assume that they've got some stuff happening for them. But it really is uh, a position of like of being appreciative and being in a union and in solidarity with their side of the story,
Yeah.
right? And
The
and
building
that's and
safety.
that's what yeah, that's what I like. I mean, like what I was saying before. Like I mean, that there's more than one Black experience, right? So I had to like get and like be solid with other people's experience, and like what you said, Chris. there's so many layers. There's so many diversity in the community and
Yeah.
in the interracial community that is taken for granted and kind of like I don't want to be rude and say whitewash, but that's been the approach. That's been the lens of our education of all Western
Yeah.
education. Where
Yeah.
you're from, like I have family living in Switzerland from Barbados, and he says it's wild over there. It's wild.
And
And so like
Yeah.
and so like and that's in like the hub of like I've never been there, but I mean just like in a multi diverse place like Toronto that it's still so overreaching. It's it kind of like speaks to how trapped everybody was, like workers.
yeah.
Uh, the system wasn't trapped, but the workers were trapped. The families were trapped. How
Yeah.
we were taught, right? So we've been doing what we've been taught, and what we've seen and whatever, and um, and I think that it's really it really speaks to that to like the outcomes that black families have talked about like when in the article and we'll get there but I mean it really is about like moving things and making things different for this like for not just this population of people but especially the people that have to deal with people that are supposed to be supporting them and helping them get back to a better life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We also
things
have to
can
take
things
into
can
account that like um many people may experience it differently, but it depends on how they react to it, right? Like I experienced something, you experienced, we could have experienced the same type of thing, but my reaction can be different than yours, right? So even though some people experience the same things, their reaction is very different, which makes them deal with trauma differently than another group, you know? So we gotta just kind of take all that into account, right? You guys want to move on to traditional and more modern intervention strategies and how they've impacted Black and Indigenous families?
yeah we could talk about
Yeah,
that, yeah,
sure.
sure.
All right, let's take a look at that and basically look at what's been done and what needs to change and how we can, as practitioners, grow together as people and in our field, right? Um, so, Chris,
Yeah.
Michelle, anybody want to?
Sure. Well, I can say that traditionally, again, like what we sort of reached on, what we sort of touched on before, and I know as a CYW working in when I worked in for CAS and when I worked in open custody, it was like that lens that was not really a cultural lens. It was a lens that we were all sort of caught in. So you didn't really have that much say as a worker. You couldn't really uh, talk to the kids
Mhm.
in a language you couldn't like be like
Those like certain boundaries you couldn't.
you couldn't have that cultural connection, right?
Yeah,
You cannot really be an ally per se because like people were watching, and most of the people were watching were like the supervisor and other like white girls, white staff. So you had to be sort of behaving yourself.
yeah,
So
they were
you couldn't
taking
really be
yourself.
you couldn't even really do the work because
Yeah,
you can't really be yourself. I could not be myself as a black girl around black kids,
yeah,
and that's real. That's truth. Like I can just think of so many experiences, and it's just not only is it not respectful. It's like that tone of oppression that we were talking about when Chris, when we talked about the intersecting identities. You have kids in custody, so they're young offenders. Uh, their sons, they're labeled bad kids. They're 15 and 16 years old. They're away from their mama. They're in a house where they're like, boroughs away from their area. So they're literally like so removed from their home and everything else that they know to a different area of Toronto, like out in the East End, to be like again dropped in a white house,
yeah,
right? Right back to like that family of circle system, focused on the families. They're far from, and I used to always tell the kids, "What are you doing here? You're so far from your home." But like understanding that, part of the way that we went about the work was causing the recidivism because if we were coming at them culturally and coming at them spiritually and coming at the way that they understood, maybe they would not come back to jail. You know what
mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe they
Yeah.
wouldn't be caught up in
That
that
circle.
the same the same cycle of like, hey, I'm a no good, I'm a criminal, whatever. But they got that reinforcement from the school
Yeah,
because they're always being watched. They're in spec ed. They're labeled something's wrong with you anyways. And these
like
kids
you're not
don't.
going anywhere, and this is who you are, kid. was
Well,
non.
you're not making great choices if you're labeled like wrong, if people aren't
Course.
respecting you and your identity and who you are. So it's kind of like, you know, I know that approach, uh, like it clearly spoke to like the outcomes that kids that were in custody, that
Mhm.
their families saw over and over and over and over. It was not like a family systems of care. It was not like a respectful approach to like whether the Caribbean family, the Black family, the Black Canadian family, Somalian kids. No. It was downtown Toronto Boys Home, whatever they said, and it came from the Ministry of Services, which is like the government, and it's what they said. And it was like the kids did not get care, and I used to be very sad, but I also felt like, you know, stuck. You know, that was my job, but it was also, you know, I was also in the same bind as everyone else. That was the approach of the work. There were open custody kids. There was a way of going about the work. There was a way to intake, way to go to jail, way to serve the food, way to do group, way to do intervention, certain times. So it wasn't really a culturally reflective practice. So
I totally.
that's not. Well, it was not care.
Yeah. I
It was
totally.
not care. It was housing kids.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly,
Yeah.
um, I worked in a group home where we dealt with youth from like 13 to 17. And it was very similar to what you were saying, Michelle, where like all the staff, all of us, you know, we were all white individuals, all of us. And we had all type of youth in the house. And you would walk around and you wouldn't see anyone's like cultures like presented in the home. Like this is the home where they've lived, they're living in this, right? They're getting in-home treatments at this, but there's no books, there's no nothing, no pictures, no nothing that represents everyone's cultures. So how are we supposed to serve these and have them feel comfortable with us if we can't even show, like, represent them in the homes? And you know their families
Yeah.
would come in for like clinicals and things like that, and here we are sitting in a living room with some flower pictures on the wall, and we're all just sitting there like it's a big beautiful, no, where's all the cultural and the inclusion and everything that we preach that we are, but we're not showing or doing any of that. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing where like there's the structure, like you can't talk to them in this way, and in this time you need to put them in bed, like they need to go to bed at 10. It was so structured that there was no space for us to really connect in a more not personal, but like an actual, like they're humans, right? Like that connection to actually be like, hey, we are here for you. I understand you. I get it. Like, you know, there was none of that. And it actually it made me feel like what I had to do, I couldn't do because there were so many restrictions that held us back from what these youth and families deserve, right?
And I feel like that almost reinforces some kind of like power dynamic between you are the worker and they are the person
Exactly.
who's just there and needs the help, but you shouldn't necessarily relate to them on a even or human level, but rather you're the one up here working for them or to be there for them, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always used to say, like, you know, we're coming into their home. Like, yes, this is our workplace, but it's their home first. So we need to accept them instead of just coming in with all these rules and expect them to follow. Like, they're away from their family, they're away from so much, and they're put in this home with people they don't know, other youth that are going through different things that don't understand them, and they just can't connect. And it's, you know, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, just for the sake of time, I think maybe we should go to the next one.
yeah, let's move on.
Did you do
Oh,
Chris? Did you do yours?
no, so the traditional kind of approach or theory that I wanted to mention was sort of like a behavior modification approach. And I think this
Mm-hmm.
kind of ties into like a medicalization or a medical model of looking at problematic behaviors and trying to implement a very rigid, structured, and honestly, not dehumanizing, but almost yeah, this kind of derogatory sort of okay, I'm going to train you to do something better. And I think in respect to Black and Indigenous communities who are going to be disproportionately involved with children's services, they're the ones who are going to be receiving these sorts of techniques and interventions more often. And yeah, basically I have this one article that I found. It was from 1964, a published study, and I'll add the link to it later. But basically, it was called a behavior modification technique for the hyperactive child, and it mentions how they had auditory stimuli, and that they were paired with giving them candy and pennies as well to try to get the target behavior.
Oh
You
wow.
know, yeah, and
Smart system.
yeah, basically, I just think that this is an approach that, sure, was it effective in certain ways? Yeah, but did it take into much context the full identity of the person, and did it leave out a lot of, yeah, just
Soul,
a lot of context, right? And
like
rather
their
than
soul and their spirit.
Yeah.
exactly, it's almost the opposite of what Garfad and all them the characteristics of a relational approach. Um, yeah, it kind of is like the antithesis of that, I would say.
Yeah,
And
I know.
so,
Yeah.
anyway, I thought that was an interesting one. I see that in the school settings. I've never worked in a group home or in child services or anything, but I see that in the school settings. And it's a difficult one sometimes because you are, in a way, trying to get target behaviors in order to have things function smoothly in a classroom. But then I think it's that fine line of also incorporating a more relational, human approach to things.
Yeah, or even just like I currently work in the school setting, so like I said, like you said, I do see it as well. But also sometimes just figuring out what the root problem is of that behavior. You know what I mean? I
Mhm,
think like
mhm.
here's your lollipop or whatever if you stop kicking, but maybe there's
Yeah,
something in the past that we don't know. Again, it completely avoids the whole trauma that has been passed on. Who knows what's happened, right? But
totally,
Well, maybe
totally. And so often these behaviors that can be then considered to be a difficult child or a hyperactive child can be a result of
that could
X, Y, and Z, different kind of traumas, different kind of whatever,
or
and it can be
simple
showing itself in this.
malnutrition. Oh, simple
but
Exactly.
if we agree, or if we think about if we're just gonna talk about trauma and what Black and Indigenous kids have experienced, it is the trauma of racism, right?
absolutely.
and
Yes.
and, and
Yeah.
that's why they behave the way they do,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
that's why people look at them the way they do, because they behave that they're not valued or cared for, and
yeah.
then they get labeled and get removed and
That's
placed in places where they don't belong, and they're not supported, and then the family is blamed for the behavior as opposed to society and as opposed to community support. And it's not like it's like, I don't want to say like it's not ever going to change, but I mean, if we get to that understanding that that trauma is connected to racism, and that is here in their brain and in their heart, and how, if we connect
humanity.
differently to their soul, their spirit, culturally, maybe we can shift some of that pain and some of that hurt, whatever. Not
Absolutely.
whatever, but that's the understanding of where the trauma comes from.
Yeah.
That it's
Yeah.
not something that they did to themselves. It's something that was done to
Present
them.
to them.
And
Yeah.
understanding that that's the beginning of understanding the trauma of racism, and why when you take Black kids or kids that are racialized or Indigenous kids away from their family, you're doing even more harm.
Exactly.
So that's why,
They're
like,
piling
not
on
just
the
educating
trauma.
me. Well, yeah, we're just like stirring the pot, because like why touch them, leave them, they're already harmed. So that's why this whole idea of like the alternative practice, the alternative of leave them alone, the
Yeah,
alternative of respect their family dynamic, culture, whatever it looks like, not to you. You don't need to worry about it. Just get in and be glue, and help support that family, help guide that family through the crises that were not put on them by anybody but the system itself, right?
exactly.
So all those things, that's not on them, that's on us to help them figure it out. But I don't want to digress. I just think that when you keep talking about trauma, we need to, like, I can identify it for you. It's the trauma of racism, and that's why even me as a Black person,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
been part of that. You know what I mean? Part of
There's
like
so much. It's like
not recognizing the trauma of other races and their trauma as well.
it's a
It's
conversation
for
that
all the,
can just keep
yeah,
going.
absolutely.
It's an ongoing conversation. But due
Yeah.
to our time, unfortunately, even though I want to keep talking about it, I think we should move on to for the organizations of Delta Family and the Native and Children. For sure.
Yeah, or we also then also just have to quickly mention the two more contemporary or modern approaches
Yeah,
Yeah.
as opposed to these
let's
two
do
that.
what yeah, let's do that if you don't mind, Ashley. We could
No,
just flip
no, go
to
ahead.
like
Of course, go ahead.
this that way it'll be smoother. Just like, so what are we doing now? What are we doing differently to
Yeah,
help
go
these
for it.
families? What do we, so again, as far as like if I just go there, uh, and something that I know that would be helpful, right? Is just to be like, even as a Black Canadian, Jamaican, Canadian, Bayesian, I have to be reflective of others, and not to be culturally reflective, but just to sit down and situate myself, not just culturally, but just values, biases, and just looking at um, the whole family unit as a piece of something that's separate and has not anything to do with me. This is an experience that I'm supposed to listen and partake, a blessing and a shared experience, as opposed to coming in all Darth Vader with the control. and make it I know what you guys need, instead of them telling me I need to hear what they need. And from a culturally respected place, if you're going into their home, right? Whether it be a Black home, Indigenous, racial, Korean home, they have rules. They have boundaries. They have spaces that you need to know what to touch, not touch, language not to say, and all these things are part of the understanding, and how we would work collaboratively, right? So I think a strategy would be, a collaborative, reflective approach that takes into consideration the harm of other people's experiences, the strength of other people's experiences, the voices, and whoever, the family pieces, that the family units that they want to bring in. But it's not a perspective that is directive. It is a perspective that is understanding of systems, and how we're going to do it together, which is
Mhm.
far from what it used to be. And we're
Yeah.
getting there now. There's still lots of talk, but the piece that still needs to be there is the cultural piece. You can't go into someone's home and, in a Black woman, wear your shoes. You can't in certain homes, you can't wear pants.
Yeah.
You can't go in as a woman, right? And you can't go in as a woman social worker and ask where the man is if you don't know where he is.
Mm.
You can't ask where her husband is or where her child is if you don't know. And if she's
Yeah.
not sharing it with you, you can't make assumptions as a Black woman or any other woman, that they're going to have a conversation and share that with you unless you develop a rapport. And that's what I like. One of the articles that I read, that I put in for our references about culture humility, that the one of the participants said that it's they don't really care what your cultural background or your race is. They want to know that you care about theirs, and that you reflect care for them, and
Mhm.
then they're willing to work with you.
But that's
Yeah.
what.
And that speaks largely to the outcomes that Black communities have reached. But these are white participants, and Black participants say the same thing. It's how we as the worker approach them, and how we engage in respect with how all their identities, starting with their culture,
Yeah. That goes back to
right?
connecting to like building on them, right? Like we have no idea. We need to educate ourselves on them, on what they need, instead of just assuming, oh, you're struggling with this. Well, let me do this, this, and this for you. Absolutely not, right? We have to build on what they have gone through. Yeah. So I totally agree with you, Michelle. Chris, would
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so for my more modern or contemporary approach, which would be different from before, and this is one that I also personally like to keep in mind when working with people, is a strengths-based approach. And so, I don't know. Okay, you can still hear me. Basically, just not focusing on anybody's deficits, and rather than looking at somebody as someone who needs fixing or is riddled with problems, instead look at them in what can they do well. What are they already capable of? Where are their resiliencies? Where are their support systems? What kind of community do they have already around them, and start from there and start building forward. And that was also mentioned in the Oliver and LeBlanc study. It was on the young women experiencing homelessness, and it was a strengths-based family resiliency perspective, and goes hand in hand with kind of family systems theory and a lot of stuff that we talk about, not only just in this course, but in general, of looking at a person from the more like the ecological perspective, look right there at the person, and then what's right around them, what's a little bit outside of that, what's outside of that, how are all of those things connected to each other. And yeah, I think when we take this sort of a perspective and understand that, yeah, for different cultures, distant family is going to be more considered an important part of their family than for others. And this is also part of that cultural sensitivity awareness that we need to have, and understanding that different cultures and different families are going to consider their family differently.
Yeah, the different very big, right? It can mean so much to so many different people. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like that whole, when you take the time to look at families and pull them apart, like you said, Chris, and then you give yourself when you give yourself a chance to like look at their strengths and what they've done and what they've accomplished and what's really here. Oh my God, look what they did. Look what they were able to do. Look what they're living on, barely, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without the resources, without whether family support or a certain limited income and all the different, like, many issues that they might be dealing with over and over and over and over and over, right?
I think by going
without getting a different turnout, right? Without getting a different turnaround. I mean, that in itself is a form of strength. But when you give yourself a chance to like remove the binary of the stigma and the stereotypes and all the labels and all your assumptions and all that sort of stuff, then you open up your heart not just to the family, and you can relax and let them tell you what they need and what's been going on, and give them some sort of like, that's how we're going to empower them to figure it out. But I mean, when you're in the home, I don't, I mean, it's going to be really, really impactful to the family when you, let your
guard down.
let your guard down and take off your power hat and whatever, and shift yourself into that position. Like, you're in my home, and you kind of like, I'll say bow down to them, but you come in respectfully and you let them take the reins in their hand, is position them already in a way that hopefully, my God, I hope that they've had more experiences, but they probably have not. And that right there is like that's a big deep breath. Like, they go, oh my God,
let them lead it.
When you come in without that, you know what I mean? You come in like the way you said, like without all that sort of attitude of coming in here to fix the show. You can't fix my show unless I want you to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I let you in.
It's all volunteer. Unless you take my kid, you have to make me want to work with you, and that's what we want. We want that customer. Right?
Building that relationship, right? Doing that will build a better relationship and will allow the family to let you in to exactly what their needs, right? You can't just walk in there and assume that they're gonna accept you, and the same way we can assume them, they, so it makes you build a relationship when you go that way, Michelle. Like, you build a different rapport, a different relationship where they feel open and comfortable to tell you more than what we assume or whatever's in their vibes, right?
Well, that's the collaborative approach, right? That's got to be it.
If I make quick, this is going to end in 20 seconds. Let's then start another link, and we'll go over our organizations, and then what our strategies that going forward. So I'll send you guys another link, and we'll keep going.
All right.
Okay.
All right.